Война в целом несправедлива, а также несправедлива с точки зрения преимущества. Если артиллерия бьет на 20 километров, а у России на 40 километров.
So the panic and coup coming out of the Kyiv regime right now is getting to a fever pitch level. But it's not just because Russia captured the strategic town faster than most would have expected. It is also not just because it caused a chaotic withdrawal with heavy casualties on the Ukraine side. It's also because of the mere fact that we can now get this type of reporting from Western mainstream media. This, to me, is perhaps the biggest signal that Zelensky, his regime, the armed forces of Ukraine, and the entire Ukrainian country is staring into the abyss of a defeat.
You want to understand that this is going to be a stunning defeat for all the people. And as you know, there are many of them who have predicted all along that Ukraine could win.
It's a sign that the West has given up on this war. But it didn't occur just because of Avdiivka. No. This was occurring since last year. I made 2 videos predicting the end for Zelensky. One entitled Last Days, and a more recent and popular one entitled There Is No 2025. Essentially, I was making the point that Zelensky won't survive 2024. And it is because the Western leadership has deemed him a failure and will replace him if he did not sign a peace deal with Russia. There were even rumors circulating social media that toward the end of 2023, Western officials were secretly pushing Zelensky to sue for peace as aid was drying up. But Mr. Zelensky, being true to his nature, that is, a naive comedian with no political or military experience, ignored the advice and continued in his Hitlerian delusions of no retreat. And now it seems Western media and Western officials have simply had enough. So we have articles like this coming out from the Washington Post. Ukraine has suffered heavy losses during a chaotic withdrawal as Russia seized Avdiivka. So here's what Washington Post has to say. Ukraine failed to safely evacuate all its troops from the eastern city of Avdiivka, or Avdeyevka, as it will now be called, as that is the Russian pronunciation. During its, and these are quotations, disorderly retreat last weekend, despite claims from its new top military commander that the move was designed to save lives and avoid encirclement. Now that title is loaded with judgment and criticism from the West. It seems to me that the US is not at all happy with the new change of military leadership in Kyiv. So does that mean Zelensky has done yet another purge of his top brass? Well, for the less astute followers of this war, Asia Times broke the news on February 9th that Zelensky had finally succeeded in firing the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces, General Valery Zaluzhny, and that despite the long months of conflicts between them, which I've also documented, General Zaluzhny finally accepted the order and thanked Ukrainians for their sacrifice. Zelensky then went on to fire most of the top brass in the army who were aligned with General Zaluzhny and replaced him with General Syrsky, who, by the way, is a close friend of General Zaluzhny.
Як ви оцінюєте ситуацію зараз?
Ну, ситуація на даний час можна оцінити як складна. Тобто противник зараз наступає фактично на всі лінії фронту.
So you have to ask the question why? Why now? Especially since, as Asia Time reports, Colonel General Syrsky is not known for achieving victories. He is older than Zaluzhny, with an age of 58 years, and he is the commander of the Ukrainian ground forces, who, as the journalists take the time to point out, has been losing along the entire line of contact.
Что касается в целом ситуации, это безусловно успех, я вас поздравляю. Его нужно развивать, это тоже очевидная вещь, но развитие должно быть хорошо подготовленным, обеспеченным, различным состоянием вооружения, техникой и боеприпасами.
But that's not even half of the problem for Ukraine. The real problem for Zelensky, and by extension for Ukraine, is that their employer, Washington, did not approve of the dumping of Zaluzhny, as Western officials, along with many Russians, regarded General Zaluzhny as a competent and serious military leader. Firing Zaluzhny was, in US terms, the same as firing the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff in the middle of a war. General Zaluzhny also did not support Zelensky's new draconian conscription law to mobilize 500,000 more helpless Ukrainian citizens, which, unlike the previous mobilizations, is likely now to impact Ukrainian elites or the children of the elites. This, no doubt, will cause significant blowback on Kyiv. But let's go back to the Washington Post article. The Washington Post said they were able to interview some of the Ukrainian servicemen who had been fighting in Avdiivka, and boy, oh boy, it's not sounding good at all.
Що вони ніхто не їде, а ваші там хлопці теж їздять і сам.
Всі ушли, всі відступили, нам сказали, що машина нас забере. Ми дві ноги перебиті, в спині осколки, я не можу взагалі нічого.
А ти сам там чи що?
Ні, нас 6 чоловік.
А мені на... А як вони могли вас бросити?
Я не знаю. Отак. Троє.
Мам,
4
успокойся.
чоловіка, таких як я, теж не можуть ходити.
Those servicemen described the rapid withdrawal as being chaotic and poorly planned. The accounts suggest that the retreat ordered by Colonel General Syrsky was grim and dangerous, and hardly the orderly pullback to more advantageous positions that he and President Zelensky claimed.
The operational situation around Avdeevka, in order to avoid encirclement and preserve the lives and health of servicemen, I decided to withdraw our units from the city and move to defense on more favorable lines.
One soldier, speaking on the condition of anonymity, said that some troops who were ordered to take positions were either lost or destroyed. Another soldier said that the troops of the 110th Brigade were exhausted after serving without rotations for 2 years, and their fatigue led them to abandon their positions without prior coordination. And that's not even the end of the criticism. Another platoon commander with the first name Sehi of the 53rd Brigade said that by the time the reserve troops arrived, the last evacuation road out of the Avdiivka city was nearly cut off by the Russians. Hasty retreat and loss of Avdiivka broke the boys a little psychologically. Yes, just a little bit. And the news is still rushing out. Yesterday, being the 20th of February, New York Times reported that at least hundreds of Ukrainian troops have been captured by advancing Russian units, while admitting that estimates would vary and a precise count of captured or missing Ukrainians may not be possible until Ukraine solidifies new defensive lines. But the New York Times went on to actually give a figure. They said that 2 soldiers with knowledge of Ukraine's retreat estimated that between 850 to 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers appear to have been captured or are unaccounted for. But that's also what Russian state media Sputnik says. So is it that Western liberal media is now spouting pro-Russian propaganda? So why did this happen in such a bad way for Ukraine? Well, aside from the obvious facts, which I, among others, have been reporting since the war started, we all know that Ukraine is low on ammo, has suffered too many casualties, and even as Western officials admit, pulled out of Avdiivka way too late. But let's, as the saying goes, give Jack its jacket. Credit must be given to Russian strategy. Yes, the clever and never before seen innovation of surrounding a city before you capture it. Never before in history have we seen such innovative techniques. I mean, it's not like the Russians didn't do this same strategy in 2014 in Debacle or in 2023 in Bakhmut. Yet somehow the Ukrainians can't seem to figure out how to just leave a damn city before the pincers start closing. Enter the partial encirclement, a tactic so groundbreaking that it was used since the 13th century with the Mongol Empire. Actually, let's start before that. Sun Tzu, the famous Chinese military general who lived before Christ was alive, BC, was talking about partial encirclements. In one of his often quoted essays in the seminal work, The Art of War, he said, under the heading of maneuvering, when you surround an army, leave an outlet free. This does not mean that the enemy is to be allowed to escape. The object is to make the enemy believe that there is a road to safety and thus prevent his fighting with courage of despair. After that, you may crush him. In an article on Genghis Khan's Secrets of Success, it was said that by leaving a gap in the encirclement, the Mongols allowed the enemy what looked like a means of escape. In reality, the gap served as a trap. In their panic and desire to get away, the enemy rarely maintained their discipline and often discarded their weapons to flee faster. Now, I have no military experience or training, but I could simply type the words partial encirclement in Google and figure out the Russian strategy. Yet somehow it continues to baffle the Ukrainian army's leadership. Amazing. So we have 1,000 captured or dead Ukrainians from Avdiivka, and that number is still likely to grow in the coming days. But the number of Ukrainians captured or killed isn't as significant as what it has done to the Ukrainian morale. The New York Times reports that American officials have said in recent days that morale was already eroding among Ukrainian troops in the wake of the failed summer counteroffensive last year and the removal of their top commander, General Zaluzhny. Now, these admissions really should have been spoken about since 2022 and 2023, when Russia encircled or captured or killed thousands of Ukrainians in Mariupol, in Severodonetsk, in Lysychansk. So why all of a sudden are we now getting more truthful reporting from the West now? Well, I think it's because the West is setting up Zelensky for a removal. And thus, he is no longer being touted as the next Winston Churchill. And speaking of Zelensky, what does he have to say for himself about this debacle? Well, it seems that his Hitlerian delusions have no end. At the Munich Security Conference in Germany on the 17th of February, Zelensky claimed that to avoid being surrounded, they decided to withdraw to a nether land. He continued, "This does not mean that people retreat for a few kilometers and Russia has won something. They have not captured anything."
Russia has not seized anything. We have to understand that after those 2 years of war, Russia has tried in the east of the country to do something. And what does it mean?
Those were his words. According to President Zelensky, the city of Avdiivka never existed in the first place. His Ukrainian troops fought and died for nothing, as the city simply doesn't exist. But the Russians say that is not what happened at all. The Russian military website on the 17th of February said that the Ukrainian army's announcement of the withdrawal from Avdiivka was not to save the lives of the soldiers. But get this, it was done to create a political advantage for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, as well as the new commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Alexander Syrsky. A comment on social media said that the withdrawal from Avdiivka was at least a month late when General Valery Zaluzhny mentioned this since December of 2023, and I put that in a video when they withdrew from Marinka. Some of the comments said that Mr. Zelensky washed his hands at the right time, because now all responsibility for the fall of the city can be blamed on General Zaluzhny. Meanwhile, the Kyiv International Institute of Sociology released the results of a public opinion poll showing an unprecedented increase in trust in General Zaluzhny and a decline in trust in President Zelensky. And here are some statistics. In February, 94% of respondents trusted General Zaluzhny, which was up from 92% in December of 2023. 64% trusted President Zelensky, down from 77% in December. And on February 8th, just before the collapse of Avdiivka, a survey showed that Colonel General Syrsky, the new commander-in-chief, his support rate was 33% in December. So, given all this information and all these debacles for Ukraine, how many of you think that a possible rebellion is brewing to overthrow Zelensky and Syrsky? And no, by the way, not a fake rebellion like what Prigozhin tried in his March of Justice in June of 2023, which, by the way, might be a good video for you to watch next.